You know, being a mage in Baldur's Gate 3 is actually really fun. Well, Baldur's Gate 3 has two default Magus archetypes, the Wizard and the Sorcerer. But which one should you choose and why? Hi, I'm Ronan and welcome to my channel. I cleared Honor Mode first try a little bit ago, and now I'm on a mission to try and clear it solo with every single Origin character. Since today we are talking about being a Magus, that leads us to Gale. And don't worry, I will have a build breakdown for both a Wizard and Sorcerer variants, that way you can choose whichever one you like, and I will talk about the benefits and flaws of each. Before we get started, like and subscribe if you're new, and shout out to Suicide Squash for being a member of my channel. If you want shoutouts like they have, early access to videos like this, and some other benefits, then hit join down below. So Sorcerer versus Wizard. The main benefit of being a Sorcerer, in my opinion, is going to be the default proficiency in Constitution saving throws. This will help out to make sure your concentration spells will be substantially harder to break. Your spells are based on Charisma, so not only as you level up your Charisma will your spells become stronger, but your dialogue checks will also become stronger as well, meaning this character can be the face of your party. Not to mention, if you choose to be a Draconic Sorcerer, you can boost one element of your choice, gaining even more damage, or you could also go Storm Sorcerer if you want some lightning-based enhancements, along with the ability to fly as a bonus action, which is also very powerful, especially if playing solo. Lastly, the biggest benefit of being a Sorcerer is going to be the meta magic, allowing you to amplify your spells in powerful and various ways. This can range from twin casting a spell, meaning you can cast the same spell twice in one action to hit two different targets. You have distance spell to increase the range of your spells by 50%. This also includes melee spells as well. And arguably the strongest meta magic, Quicken spell, allowing you to cast a spell as a bonus action, and so much more. But what about the downsides? Well, there are three subclasses of Sorcerer, and I think the Wild Magic subclass is pretty dang weak. Although it can be very fun at times, if you plan to play on Honor Mode, having a random proc at a bad time can throw your run completely away, so I wouldn't recommend that subclass. The overall access to spells you have is quite limited, and with the way we subclass here, you don't actually gain access to 6th rank spells, although you can upcast other spells as needed. I think Wizard early on is very challenging to play solo due to the low health pools that you have. Wizard has the lowest base HP in the game, so keep that in mind, but later on, especially in late game, they really shine. Wizards can learn spells via scrolls, meaning they gain access to 6th rank spells even when multiclassing, which is very useful. Using the Illithid Power ability drain, you can auto-kill low intelligence enemies, and you have access to a ton of different subclasses, though we will be using Evocation for this build. As the Evocation Wizard, if you do play with friends, you have the ability to not only make your friends auto-save their throws against your spells, your AoE spells won't do any damage. Your cantrips will do damage to enemies whether they have their saving throws passed or not, and all evocation spells, regardless of the school that it comes from, whether it's fire, ice, even magic missiles for example, will all do additional damage equal to your intelligence modifier as long as it's considered an evocation spell. Starting stats are on screen now. To the left is the Sorcerer, which is the charisma based version. To the right is the Wizard version, which uses intelligence. This build realistically only needs 2 feats to function. The first feat is ASI because we will utilize the Hag's-Hair here since it is meant to be a solo based build. I use the Hag's-Hair for Charisma as Sorcerer or for Intelligence for Wizard. Second feat is going to be up to you if you would like to use double staves, which I have used in my previous Frost Mage Honor Mode playthrough, link in the description down below. Double staff is very powerful for extra effects. Or if you are playing as a human, you do gain shield proficiency base, so you can utilize a staff and shield already, so you could use the alert feat for extra initiative, which is also very useful. So how should you level this build? Well, if you get the enemy wet, you can do double damage with lightning or cold based magic. And because I already utilized my cold Sorlock build before in my last Honor Mode run, I want to focus on lightning instead, which means I'm sure you can guess by now, we are going to be multi-classing with the Tempest Cleric, which is very, very powerful. This will give you the ability to have Sanctuary pretty early on, which is so fantastic if you need to get out of combat or if you make a mistake. Because you're playing solo, assuming you're following this build, it's definitely handy. Not to mention you'll have proficiency and the ability to actually utilize heavy armor, and there's some very powerful heavy armor early on as well. And you'll have the option to have maximum damage on lightning or base spells, which is very potent when combined with the wet status condition on enemies. I would suggest your first 4 levels go into Sorcerer or Wizard, 2 levels into Tempest Cleric, and then the rest of your levels back into Sorcerer or Wizard. The way this build works is you want to actually utilize your Channel Divinity in order to maximize your damage whenever possible once the enemy is wet. Because of gear that you get in Act 3, you will have 2 charges of this. So obviously you're going to want to get the enemy wet as soon as possible, which is why I do really like the Sorcerer version of this a lot, especially early on, because you can utilize quick casting to get the enemy wet with Create Water during combat, or if you know you're going to be fighting enemies that are kind of like neutral and you want to kill them, you can get them wet without starting combat. You can see I have these enemies wet already, and if you read the wet status, they gain resistance to fire damage, but are vulnerable to lightning and cold damage, meaning they're going to take double damage from it. So if I were to attack these guys, I'm going to do a lot of damage. So let's go ahead and do that then. I'm going to use my Arcane Battery to upcast my spell for free. I'm going to use Call Lightning at rank 6, and we're going to use it right here on both these targets. We do want this to be maximum damage, so we're going to utilize that. I'm going to use shield, that way I don't get hit by the enemy. And although I am using double staffs here, I do think overall a shield and the alert feat may be better overall since going first in combat, as solo is a must-have. Now one thing I do want to point out though, because I did use my Call Lightning, this is a concentration spell, I can cast it again for free at a 6th rank spell slot without actually utilizing another spell slot, which is very useful. And because I used Arcane Battery, I still have my 6th rank spell slot for something I can utilize later on. So for example, I could attack this target here now. I'm going to use Heart of the Storm Lightning instead, just to do additional damage. Did some okay damage. He's still alive unfortunately, but you can see he has Radiating Orbs and Reverberation on him. I'm going to use my Quicken spell here, and we're going to actually use Lightning Bolt, and we're going to attack both enemies here instead. I am going to use Destructive Wrath. And they're dead. Bye-bye. And that's essentially how you play the Sorcerer version. You just get the enemy wet and use your lightning magic on the enemies. You have some other useful spells that you can utilize in between defensively and offensively as well, but it's mainly lightning magic. Now the wizard playstyle is very similar. You can still get the enemy wet if you wish and do double damage with your lightning spells here, but because you are a wizard, all your evocation spells will do additional damage equal to your intelligence modifier. So your Firebolt cantrip, for example, spells like Magic Missiles do extra damage because of your intelligence modifier. It's an evocation spell, so you get extra damage for that. You gain access to spells like Glyph of Warding, for example. Even though I do have 2 levels into my Tempest Cleric, because I was able to learn spells via scrolls, you have the 6th rank spell Chain Lightning, which is very potent. I can summon things. You can do all kinds of different things as a wizard that you normally would not be able to do if you were the sorcerer. So for example, let's go ahead and open up on the enemy. I could use Glyph of Warding here and basically have all these guys down below completely get messed up. So I can upcast this for free, which is what we're going to do. So you can see I toggle Arcane Battery on, which comes from my staff. Click it. I can upcast this lightning to a 6th rank spell, and I can get all these guys right here. Now, the only downside is, you can see I don't have any bonus actions. You don't have any sorcery points. I'm going to use a potion of speed real quick, and now we're going to use chain lightning right here in this target, and you're just going to see a mass amount of damage. So they're all pretty much dead for the most part, except for this guy here, and then of course the guy all the way down there. So what I can do instead now, I have a 5th level spell slot. You could use the Artistry of War, which is also affected by your intelligence modifier because it's an evocation spell. If you wanted to use Frost in the enemy, because they're wet, they take double damage from that as well. We're going to use Artistry of War. We're going to hit this target here. He should die automatically. And we'll use the rest on this target down here, except he's slightly out of range. So let's go ahead and get in range first. So now when I go to use it, I should be able to hit all the targets, no issue. And they're gone. And of course, I can easily hit other targets as needed. So say we want to hit somebody that's really far away. So that's why I really like magic missiles. It travels super far. Like this guy up here, we're going to attack him. Oh, actually I aimed at totally wrong. I didn't hit him because of the camera angle. But you get what I'm saying. I could technically hit him from here. Or how about the enemies that are like inside the house? This guy slightly out of my range. So let's go ahead and move up just a little bit here. So even though this guy is indoors, I can still hit him with my magic missiles. We'll use a rank 4 on him. Oh, it says cannot find path. What about you? Here we go. This one can be hit. And he's dead. You can see you should do some incredible damage with this. If you take a look at the damage here real quick, I do want to showcase that the force damage, you get that extra intelligence modifier. So even though normally magic missiles is so weak, it is so much stronger than you would normally think. And all your evocation spells get additional damage to your intelligence modifier. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to talk gear. And the gear we are going to be talking about will be none other than Act 3 gear first. Then I'll talk about gear you can utilize throughout Acts 1 and 2. Keep in mind, Gale is a human, so if you don't want to utilize the dual staff feat that we talked about earlier, dual wielder, to have 2 staffs, you can use a shield in your offhand, which is very useful because you have shields like Adamantine, so you can't be crit, Catherick for extra spell save DC, or even the Sentinel Shield for extra initiative and advantage on perception checks. And this will give you higher AC overall. Not by much, it's only by 1, but you do have that bonus for the shields as well. Now, of course, weapons, the Spell Sparkler you get in Act 1 will last you throughout the rest of the game. Getting extra lightning charges in combination with the legendary staff in Act 3 is huge. This gives you a spell called Karaska's Favor. If you choose the Bolts of Doom version, which you should always choose as the lightning-based wizard or sorcerer, you gain lightning resistance, which you would already have, but you also gain damage equal to your proficiency, so that's +4 at level 12, and you gain lightning charges when you cast any lightning-based magic. It also gives you the ability to cast Chain Lightning and Lightning Bolt for free, which is insane. And you have Arcane Battery, so you can utilize this and use any spell that you wish for free at a 6th rank spell, which is absolutely insane. It's very, very strong. Of course, if you would like to replace the Spell Sparkler with the Staff of Spell Power to have extra spell save DC and attack rolls and a second charge of Arcane Battery, you certainly can. Your bow is strictly for utility. Hellrider Longbow in Act 3 gives you extra initiative, advantage on perception checks. In Act 1, you have the Bow of Awareness for extra initiative that way. Of course, we are a sorcerer for this version, so the Birthright Helm giving you +2 charisma is very useful. I'm at 22. With the Mirror of Loss in Act 3, you can get to 24. I chose the Cloak of the Weave for the extra spell save DC and attack rolls, but you can utilize any other cloak that you wish. Of course, because we did multi-class with Cleric, we have access to heavy armor. The best heavy armor in the game is armor resistance, giving you resistance and blade ward for free. This is very useful since we kind of have low rolls against other spells, so getting that free resistance, the extra 1d4 to saving throws, is actually very useful, plus blade ward so we take half damage from all melee. Feel free to replace this with anything else that you wish. Early on, you can easily use the adamantine splint armor. If you want to utilize the Reaper's Embrace that you get at the end of Act 2, feel free. The go-to glove and shoe combination, Belligerent Skies, Boots of Stormy Clamor, it's too good not to utilize. It's the best set of like caster weapon or armor in the game in my opinion. They're constantly doing lightning damage, constantly putting reverberation on the enemy, and because of that, you're constantly giving them even more reverberation stacks with the boots as well, so people are going to be knocked prone all the time. Combine that with Kalos Glow Ring for extra damage, which is Radiant, which then procs the gloves, and the Coruscation Ring for Radiating Orbs, which then procs the boots, and you are looking at just a CC machine that does a ton of damage, not to mention all the lightning damage you get from your lightning orbs as well from your staff will also proc the gloves, which will then proc the boots. It's just an endless chain, which is very, very strong. Of course, another set of gloves I do think is useful in certain situations is the Daredevil gloves. Being able to use range spells as melee is pretty dang useful. When it comes to your rings, another good choice of ring is the Ring of Mental Inhibition. This thing is just very strong, although I do think this combination here is a little better. The go-to necklace in Act 3, the Amulet of the Devout, without a doubt is the best necklace to utilize. You want to utilize this at all times. It is super, super good. +2 bonus to spell save DC is insane. And it gives you an extra charge of your channel divinity. So using maximum damage, you can use twice per long rest. One thing I did want to point out in my spell book, if you don't want to utilize Misty Step, you technically don't have to, because if you go Storm Sorcery, you get the bonus action to fly. You can work around not having Misty Step if you want another offensive spell instead. Other types of helmets you may want to utilize. So of course, Act 3, Hell Dust Helmet, very, very strong. Early on, the Hat of Scion's Power for the Arcane Acuity for thunder damage. Circlet of Mental Anguish, very strong. If you don't want to be crit because you have access to heavy armor, you can use the Grim Skull. I wouldn't recommend it. Act 2, the Fistbreaker Helm is very strong, extra initiative and bonus to spell save DC. Of course, in Act 3, the Hood of the Weave, even more spell save DC and attack rolls. And if you are a wizard, you can utilize the Pointy Hat whenever you're going in dialogue checks for the extra persuasion. And that pretty much covers gear. There's plenty more you can utilize throughout Acts 1 and 2, but that basically covers everything in my opinion for most people that will be playing this type of build. Alright guys, we're going to talk spells here. I'm not going to go over wizard spells since they can pretty much learn everything via scroll anyway, but I am going to talk about sorcerer specific spells and cleric spells since the spells you have with those classes are very limited. So whether you are Draconic or you are Storm Sorcery, both are very viable. Draconic, you definitely, if you do that, want a lightning based Draconic ancestry so your lightning spells are stronger. But if you go Storm Sorcery instead, you gain some additional spells you normally wouldn't have baseline. So Storm Sorcery spells you get baseline are going to include Call Lightning, it's going to include Thunder Wave, Create or Destroy Water, which is nice so you don't have to actually utilize this spell slot from the Cleric section, so you get an additional utility spell on the Cleric side. Gust of Wind, Sleet Storm. The Cleric side here, the number one spell you want is Sanctuary. Anything else is going to be utility based when you need it, like Bless, Shield of Faith, Protection from Good and Evil, Heal, you get what I'm saying there. Keep in mind the Thunder Wave you get from the Cleric side is based off your Wisdom, so don't utilize that. Make sure you utilize the Charisma based version. Now on the Sorcerer side, cantrip wise, Bone Chill is mainly used for Act 2 to make sure undead don't heal, aka Catherick Thorm, the boss. Because Gale is a human, he can't actually see in darkness, so the light cantrip here is very useful. Minor Illusion and Mage Hand shenanigans are always useful regardless of your class. I wanted a melee based spell, so Shocking Grasp helps out, and it is a lightning spell, so it will do extra damage. And I did take the Firebolt cantrip because I wanted some type of skill to burn webs and other things like that when needed. The meta magic I chose, Meta Magic Heightened Spell. This is mainly to make sure my CC abilities always land on my enemies, stuff like Hold Person or Hold Monster for example. This is very useful for that. Obviously Quicken Spell, so I can use a bonus action for my spell. You have Distance Spell if I ever need a spell to be further range. This is very useful, but you can replace this with something else. And of course, Twin Spell is also very powerful. The spell list in general, I did go Magic Missiles just to have something in case I need it. This is great because it never misses, it can hit around corners, and if they are resistant to my damage in general, Force is usually not resistant by majority of enemies in the game. Shield, fantastic. Reaction, extra AC, fantastic spell. I did end up picking Witch Bolt early on. This is a concentration spell, but it does do decent damage and it's an early lightning spell that you have access to. Likewise for Chromatic Orb, though Chromatic Orb does fall off a little bit in the late game, early on it is still pretty useful. Naturally Misty Step, I wanted invisibility in case I needed it. Hold Person pretty much speaks for itself, and Counterspell is Counterspell. Haste is also very useful, however, definitely not needed, and you can replace this with other stuff if you want to. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. I'm Ronan, I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, definitely like and subscribe, comment down below what you want to see next. I'm really close to hitting 10k subs, so if you really enjoy my content, please subscribe. I really appreciate it and it really helps the channel out a lot. See you next time.